Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto trains 3 years with monster girls, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. Naruto Uzumaki was born to Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, two proud shinobi of Konoha. His father had achieved his goal of becoming Hokage during his life and was regarded by many as the village's greatest hero for the sacrifice he made during the Kyuubi attack. His mother was from a powerful clan gifted in sealing arts and had been Konoha's before him. She should have died on that night when the Kyuubi was released, but by a one-in-a-million miracle, she managed to cling to her life and had made a slow, steady recovery over the years. In the years since the Kyuubi attack, many things have happened. Naruto had become a shinobi himself, being placed on a team with Kakashi Hatake, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. They'd gone on missions together, took part in the exams, stopped Suna's from destroying the village when Suna and Oto launched a joint attack, and most recently Sasuke had left the village and gone to Orochimaru. Officially Sasuke had been labeled a rogue shinobi, but the Hokage, her advisors, and those who took part in the false retrieval mission knew the full story. Sasuke would come back to the village one day, and Naruto needed to work hard so he wouldn't fall behind the Uchiha. Currently, however, training wasn't his top priority. "Come on man, all buddy, all pal of mine, this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." A man with perfectly messy, shoulder-length black hair, stubble dusting his chin, and brown eyes told his blonde friend. This above-average-looking guy was Hiramasa Fuse. He was a very interesting person. Though before that it would be best to explain how the two of them met. Kushina had, over her life, gathered many seals, ninjutsu, and artifacts from the Uzumaki clan that had been scattered to the wind after the fall of Uzushiogakure. About 2 months before Naruto's graduation, she had come across scroll-through, less than ideal methods. She had to pay up front for the tattered old thing, but if her hunch was correct, the man was woefully underselling it. Back when Kushina was a kid, she'd heard others in the clan talk of a very powerful seal that the clan head had made in his youth, a seal so powerful it could distort time and space to the breaking point. Now, she'd never heard what the seal did specifically, so she was very eager to test it out when she had gotten her hands on it. When she did use it, she found to her wonder that the seal wasn't some flashy attack or advanced storage array. No, what she held in her hands was a bridge to another world. It didn't take her, and subsequently Naruto, long to start exploring this new world. To them, this new world was just full of amazing sights, a world where shinobi, as they knew they never existed, and where many different species known as extra species were beginning to integrate into human society thanks to a bill passed by Japan's government. Oh, that was another thing they found interesting, the different counties. Fortunately they ended up in Japan, otherwise they would have needed up in a place where no one could understand them. It made getting used to this world a whole lot easier. It had been little over a week after Naruto and his mother started to explore everything about this new world when the blonde first ran into Hiramasa. At the time, Naruto was just walking down the street when the man ran out of a store and collided with the blonde, sending them both to the ground. In the fall, the harpy figurine Hiramasa had just bought snapped in half and the man had immediately blamed Naruto for the damage. After a short argument where Naruto basically told him it was his own damn fault, a large portion of that day was spent with Hiramasa chasing him around and pestering him until the blonde paid for a new figure. Somehow that led to the two of them becoming friends and Naruto's current situation. "Seriously man, don't you want a cute monster girl living under the same roof as you?" Hiramasa questioned the blonde with a huge grin as he threw his arm over Naruto's shoulder. "We're just a few steps from paradise. Just imagine the possibilities," the excited man said as he turned a disinterested Naruto to the building he'd brought him to, making an arching motion with his arm as he did so. The building Naruto was now staring at was one of those buildings that people with enough money could rent out for any number of reasons: conventions, parties, expos, to name a few examples. On this day it had been rented out for the purpose of allowing hopeful host families and extra species people to meet face to face. It really shouldn't have surprised Naruto that he got lured out here for something like this, but had he known what Hiramasa had planned, he would have turned down the offer immediately. It wasn't that he hated the idea of letting an extra species person live in his home, he just didn't think he had the time for something like that. "Forget it. I'm not interested," Naruto told his friend as he lifted Hiramasa's arm off of his shoulders. As he turned to head home, Hiramasa started to whine about this turn of events. "Ooh, come, you just need to open your eyes to their appeal man." Hiramasa whined, though it seemed to have no effect as Naruto just kept walking. Letting out a huff, the man paced the back of his wrists on his waist as he stared at his retreating pal. "If you give it a shot, I'll never ask you to do it again," Hiramasa offered, smirking when he saw the blonde stop. Turning his head to the side, Naruto narrowed his eyes at the guy. "Promise. Promise." Hiramasa chirped with a quick nod of his head. But that done, the two of them made their way through the front doors. Hiramasa was already listed as a potential host family, so it was as simple as handing over an idea to move further in. In Naruto's case, he had to spend the next 20 minutes filling out paperwork and giving his personal information. He guessed it was so they could do a background check and other such things, though it wasn't exactly a strong start. After zoning out for the last few documents, Naruto was then led to a private room and told that people looking for a host family would come to him based on the information he just provided. 40 minutes later, and the door finally swung open. Naruto was in the process of greeting whoever it was who entered the room when he felt teeth dig into his arm. With wide eyes he stared at the woman biting his upper arm. Her waist-length hair was dark blue with black markings, with the part covering her eyes extending back past her head in a sort of boomerang shape. Her skin was a pristine white, and she wore a black racing suit that clung nicely to her curvaceous body. "What are you doing?" Naruto shouted as he pulled his arm away from the woman. "Ooh, I'm sorry. It's just that you marked down that blood sucking was okay, so I figured it was okay," the woman said with an embarrassed blush as she held up her hands. For a moment Naruto just blankly stared at her. Had he really marked that as okay? Well, guess he shouldn't have blanked out with some of those papers. "So if it's okay, I'd really like to taste your blood just a little more," the leech girl told the blonde. "Oh. Sure, go ahead." Having been knocked out of his stupor, Naruto gave her permission to continue. Compared to what he's been through, the pain from her bite really wasn't anything special, and even if she took a little too much blood, he should be back on his feet in no time. Hooray. "Now, just hold still," the woman happily cheered before she leaned in. Wrapping her arms around the blonde, she pulled his shirt to the side to better show off his shoulders. As her sharp teeth broke the skin, Naruto felt her large breasts press up against him. "Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about," Naruto kept repeating in his head as he did his best not to focus on the woman's chest pressing into his own chest. Pulling her head back ever so slightly, the woman told him, "Oh wow. So good, your blood is so tasty. It's silky smooth, but oh so rich. I might get hooked on this," as her tongue slid out to lap up his remaining blood. Before she could go on, the pair heard someone knocking on the door, followed by that person shouting through the door, "Hey. We're waiting out here. Hurry up and swap out." As the woman apologized, remembering that she had to give others time to get to know this blonde, Naruto wondered if every encounter today would be like this. The next person to come in was a slender girl with wide hips. Her small chest was barely covered by a white shirt tied together just below her chest. She wore a very, very short round skirt that had straps hanging to her hips to prevent the garment from falling to the ground, and looking closely Naruto could see the thin straps of what must be a thong poking out above her skirt. Her arms and legs were covered in white and brown striped cloth. Her skin was dark and her hands and feet were covered in chitin. Her white hair fell down to her shoulders, with some falling between her black compound eyes. Sticking out of her head were two antennas, and behind her she had clear insect wings. Nice to meet you, let's get along, okay," the girl happily greeted as she came in. When the mosquito woman sat down next to the blonde, she crossed her legs as she slid up next to him. "Ugh, you know, there's so few guys okay with blood sucking, UKNOW, getting to meet you is the best," she told him. "Well, I'm glad to hear what," Naruto told her, putting on a big smile as she wrapped her arms around his left arm. "You know, the way those other girls suck blood is so rough, you know. Biting to draw out blood is like, so super violent," the girl commented. "If you're with me, I'll suck you so much more gently," she told him. "Gently?" Naruto asked the girl. "Oh, it's just, our saliva has anesthetic effects, so I'll just spread some where the blood comes out," the girl explained as she leaned in closer and started to lick his shoulder, lathering it in saliva. "If you're allergic, it may itch a little though." The girl apologized to him as her tongue's gentle lap sent pleasant shivers through Naruto's body. The girl started as something resembling a needle slipped out from her mouth. "I'll use my proboscis to suck it out," the woman said as she stuck the blonde and started drinking. Once she'd gotten a taste, she pulled back with a soft moan. This is bad. "Your blood is like, so tasty," the woman told him as she held her hand contently up to her cheek. Let me suck some more, okay?" the woman asked just before another softly spoken voice came from the other side of the door. I'm supposed to be next," the person meekly said, signaling that it was time for Naruto to entertain someone new. The next woman to come in had long, dark green hair wrapped tightly with a black band from the base of her neck to her hips, where the last bit of it was allowed to flow freely. Her bangs were much shorter in comparison to the rest of her hair, only coming to her sizable breasts with some noticeable curve to them as they both framed her face and had a few strands running between her blue eyes. Below each of her eyes was a row of 4 small black circles that curved upward as they went out. This pattern of circles was also seen on her midriff as 4 larger black circles started below each of her breasts and moved down diagonally to her sides. Starting from her hips, her body became one long dark green eel body with an underbelly being an off-white color as her upper body. Her green clothes were designed to stay in place despite her slippery body and covered her arms and breasts, leaving her shoulders bare and having a skirt to hide her more delicate bits. Around her hips, neck, wrists and head she wore jewelry that consisted of yellow circles with black centers being linked together. "You are a Naruto," tried to start since she hadn't said anything since sitting down next to him. Compared to the last two girls she was much more subdued. "I'm a mermaid. I'm a lamprey-type mermaid," the woman told him as she avoided direct eye contact while her hands nervously played with one another over her lap. After a moment she began to talk more as her eyes drifted to the side to look at Naruto. "You must think I'm disgusting. Since I'm an eel, I'm all slimy," the girl said as she fidgeted in her seat. Naruto looked at her in disbelief. This girl must have some serious self-esteem issues for her to say that. "What are you talking about? You're beautiful." Naruto just blurted out, resulting in her face heating up and turning a nice shade of red. "Do you really think that?" she asked as her head lowered in an attempt to hide her face behind her bangs. He hadn't really been thinking when he said that, but now that it was said he had to follow through. After all, he was only speaking the truth. Bringing his hand up to rub the back of his head, Naruto started to tell her that she really was beautiful. However, his words soon died in his throat when he felt her cup her webbed hands around his free hand. His heart started to beat faster and faster as he watched her bring his hand up to her face and slid his middle and index fingers into her warm mouth. Naruto felt like he was going to explode as he watched this beauty suck on him until her sharp teeth dug into his skin, allowing his blood to flow freely into this woman's mouth. Well, the sudden bite had knocked some reason into him. The sight of this girl keeping her lidded eyes locked with him while she greedily drank his blood still had its effects on him. As Naruto's fingers left her mouth she gave one last, long lick from their base to the tips. Bringing her own hand up to cover her embarrassment, the woman started to apologize to the blonde. "Ah, I'm very sorry. Once I smelled the blood in here, I just couldn't help myself. It's just that your blood is just so delicious," she said with her hand covering the lower half of her face. During this the room's door had swung open once more, this time having the first girl standing there. "Hey, are you done?" the leech woman asked. "Can I get another turn?" the mosquito girl asked. "Forget about walking off, a little blood loss, at this rate Naruto's going to end up in a grave." Later that day, as the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky an array of colors, a man sat in his large office staring at his computer screen. As the large floor-to-ceiling windows behind him gave the perfect view of the sunset, the man's eyes stayed firmly on the profile he had on the screen. This man had lived a long, productive life, and he wore his age on his sleeve for all to see, as his once jet black hair had all but turned completely gray, and the once smooth skin of his face was marred by wrinkles here and there. Picking up his phone, the man made a call and waited for the person to pick up. "What can I do for you, my boy?" the elderly voice asked after the phone had rung several times. "Did you get the profile I sent?" the man asked, his eyes still refusing to leave his computer screen. "Oh yes, it's quite remarkable, isn't it? Who would have guessed that there might be more of the family out in this world? Oh. And I assume they forged some pretty convincing documents, eh? Must have put your men through quite the goose chase," the man on the other end of the line said, and when he didn't get an immediate response, he began laughing hysterically, knowing he'd hit the nail on the head. "So what are you going to do?" the man asked when he heard the laughter die down. "Me? Shouldn't that be obvious? I've got some new family members to meet. You just better keep that grandson of mine from sticking his nose in this," the elderly man responded. "What about the boy? Think I should allow him to host an extra species?" the man questioned. "Well now, that's not really any of my concern now, is it?" the older man said before hanging up the phone. With a sigh, the man put his phone down before he started to skim through the database. He wasn't really sure what he was hoping to find, but rather hoped it had just come to him. That was when he landed on her profile, an innocent-looking lamia with red hair. "Sumisu Kuroko's your coordinator, huh? I think this could work," the man commented to himself with a small smirk. Having just taken a bath, Naruto stood in front of the mirror, looking over his body. After a quick once-over, his hands came to rest on the bathroom sink as he stared into his own reflection. "Hiramasa, you bastard," Naruto said under his breath before pulling the mirror to the side so he could grab his toothbrush. Those girls from yesterday really took a liking to him, so much so that he barely wobbled his way back home after it was all over. The bite marks had already healed and his blood was back up to a healthy level, but the loss of blood wasn't the only problem he had. Being surrounded by those girls, feeling their bodies rub and press against him as they looked for new places to draw blood, he felt like he was going to lose himself in that situation. If he had lost himself, chances are he'd be sitting in a jail cell right now. To his understanding, having sex with any extra species was a strictly prohibited act under the current law. Even knowing that, it was really hard to keep his urges under control in that situation. Though perhaps that prohibition is why Hiramasa has been on the waiting list for more than a year now. Heaven knows that if he could he'd break that law the moment he could. You're worrying about something stupid again, aren't you? A voice inside Naruto's head questioned. It was a fact Naruto kept secret from even his mother, but for the past few years he's been talking with the sealed inside his body. In the beginning it was little more than shouting and insults, but they've come a long way since then, even if Kurama was still a dick most of the time. It's not stupid, Naruto responded as he started to brush his teeth. Oh? Then what are you worried about? The fox asked, to which Naruto hesitated to answer. Voicing his concern to Kurama in this instance wasn't really appealing to the blonde. So it's stupid then, Kurama said when Naruto failed to answer. Shut up. Naruto yelled at the fox as his face heated up. Beautiful long red hair, dazzling golden yellow eyes, a figure to kill for, these were all traits that could be used to describe Mia. However, the one thing that could best describe her right now would be nervous. As the young woman sat in the back of the truck, she couldn't stop playing with the hem of her black shirt as her eyes constantly moved up and down her long, snake-like lower body. Today was the day she'd finally be assigned to a host family, and it terrified her. Compared to other extra species, Lamia had a hard time integrating into human society because of how drastically different their bodies were from humans. Their size made it hard to get around in human settlements, as pachylotherm they were affected by the temperature more, and they could often be unintentionally intimidating. Because of this, Mia had been fearing how her host family would react to her. Would they welcome her in with open arms? Would they keep her at an arm's length? Would they fear her? These thoughts ran through the poor girl's mind as the truck came to a stop. Mia took a deep breath as the door slid up. It was time. Grabbing her things, she left the truck, meeting her coordinator on the side of the road. Following the black-haired woman up to the house, Mia felt like her heart was about to explode with how quickly it was beating. Holding her breath, it felt like time had slowed down to a snail's pace as Ms. Smith's hand reached out to ring the doorbell. One moment. Mia heard a woman's voice come from inside the house. Each step Mia could hear coming towards the door rang through her head like a gong, and when the doorknob turned, her breath caught in her throat. The woman who answered the door was slender, had fair skin, violet eyes, and red hair a shade or two darker than Mia's that reached her ankles with shoulder-length strands that framed her face with a black clip that parts her hair to the left. She wore a white, high-collared, sleeveless blouse under a long, green, loose-fitting dress with a dark blue wristband on her left wrist. "Can I help you?" Kushina asked. When she had opened the door, she certainly wasn't expecting to see a government worker with a lamia standing a little bit behind her. "Yes, you can," Smith told her. "My name is Sumisu Kuroko. I'm Mia's cultural exchange coordinator," Ms. Smith said as she motioned to the girl next to her. "She's come to start her homestay, so if we could come inside and discuss the necessary," Smith was saying when Kushina cut her off. "Whoa there. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. We haven't signed up for the exchange program," Kushina quickly told the woman before this could get out of hand. Seeing the confused look on Sumisu's face and the worries on Mia's, Kushina continued. "I'm sure that Mia is a wonderful young lady, but are we just not prepared for something like this?" the woman was saying while Smith reached into her suit and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Unfolding the sheet, Smith showed it to Kushina, and prominently displayed in the top left corner of the document was Naruto's picture. "So this isn't Naruto Uzumaki's residence?" Smith asked Kushina as the woman stared blankly at the sheet of paper. "What?" Kushina breathlessly asked as the hand she was holding the door with limply dropped down to her side. "Who is it?" Naruto asked as he came down the stairs, his vision obscured by the towel he was using to dry his head. When he got to the bottom and he pulled the towel from his head, he was met with the sight of these three women staring at him, all conveying very different feelings in the process. Shit, Naruto thought as his towel slipped out of his hand and dropped to the floor. In order to figure things out, Kushina invited Smith and Mia into the house before taking Ms. Smith somewhere to talk in private, leaving Naruto and Mia alone together. The fact that Kushina hadn't reprimanded him for signing up for the exchange program without telling her was really getting to Naruto, but more importantly, this defining silence between him and Mia was going to drive him mad. He had offered to make some tea, but only got a wordless nod from the girl, and when she followed him to the kitchen, the most they had in terms of conversation were the occasional apologies from the girl every time her tail accidentally bumped into something, and Naruto telling her it was fine every time she did. Once the tea was done, they moved to a different room since Mia couldn't really sit at the dining room table, and placed a pot of tea down in the center of a short, square table. Both of them had attempted to start a conversation several times, but every time the other would make a short, nervous reply that killed the conversation before it began. Looking for any excuse to say something, Naruto noticed that Mia's cup was getting low. "Do you want some more?" Naruto asked as he picked up the tea kettle. "Ah, yeah," Mia nodded as she held her ceramic cup up. As the blonde filled the cup up, Mia stared off into nothing as she thought about the situation. Out of all the possible reactions she had been preparing herself for, confusion wasn't one of them. Just as Naruto was about to finish filling Mia's cup, the girl's lack of focus resulted in her cup slipping out of her hands and clattering against the table, sending hot tea spilling everywhere. "Ah. I'm sorry." Mia blurted out, as it bothers her, and Naruto moved away from the table to avoid getting hot tea splashed on them, or at least avoid as much of it as they could. Acting quickly, Naruto pulled his shirt off and began to soak up the mess with it. Following suit, Mia started to remove her pink jacket, offering to help him clean up the mess she made. "No, I got this," Naruto told her, never looking up from the tea he was cleaning up. Stopping with her jacket around her elbows, Mia stood in silence, her bangs casting a shadow over her eyes. "I'm just a burden, aren't I?" the girl asked, causing Naruto to stop his cleaning. "I've only caused you trouble since I got here." I'm so sorry," Mia apologized, as small droplets started to well up in her eyes. "I should be the one apologizing. You wouldn't have had to deal with any of this if I hadn't signed up without thinking," Mia heard the blonde say, getting her eyes to widen ever so slightly as her head tilted up to look at him. The wide smile she was met with made her heart skip a beat as her cheeks flushed red. Getting up, Naruto walked around to Mama's side of the table. "I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you, okay?" Naruto said as he used his hand to wipe away her tears, unintentionally making her blush worse as her heart threatened to beat right out of her chest. Staring with wide eyes as Naruto gave her such a warm smile, Mia felt her throat dry up. Opening and closing her mouth several times, Mia struggled to say anything at all, while ultimately saying nothing. "Are we interrupting?" the pair heard, resulting in Mia nearly jumping out of her skin as Naruto simply turned his head to see Ms. Smith and Kushina standing in the doorway with smirks on their faces. "Oh, you've finished talking already?" Naruto asked as he turned to fully face two women. Meanwhile, Mia quickly put her jacket back in place before cupping her hands over her thumping heart. Smith told him as Kushina walked into the room, her face having lost its smirk, replaced with a serious expression. With her arms crossed over her chest, the woman addressed Naruto, making him stand up straight at her tone. "Naruto, you shouldn't have signed up for the program on a whim, and you definitely shouldn't have kept this a secret," Kushina told her son, watching him start to sweat under her gaze. After a moment, she turned her attention to Mia. "Mia," the woman said, getting the girl to stiffen up like Naruto had as she turned to face the woman. Mia couldn't quite pinpoint why, but the woman standing before her was perhaps the most intimidating figure she'd ever met in this moment of time. Fortunately for Mia, Kushina's tone and posture quickly softened. With a warm smile, Kushina reached out her hand to pat Mia's head, telling the girl welcome to the family. After a brief moment of staring at her, wide-eyed Mia face was split by a wide grin. "Really? Oh. Thank you. Mia happily cheered as she reached out and pulled Kushina into a big hug, presently surprising the woman. A few minutes later found everyone outside to see Ms. Smith off. With the window of her black car down, Smith looked out at the trio, her sunglasses far enough down her nose for them to see her amber-colored eyes. "Remember, I'll be stopping by from time to time to check up on Mia, so try not to get into any trouble," Ms. Smith told them. After hearing them agree to stay out of trouble, Smith gave a small smile before putting up her window. With the moving truck following behind her, Smith drove off, leaving the three members of the Uzumaki household standing outside their house. After seeing the vehicles disappear around the corner, Kushina turned to talk to Mia, only to see that the girl was no longer standing next to them. "Mia?" the woman asked as she looked around. "Darling, Mom, hurry up. I still need to pick out a room and could use a little help," Mia happily said as she stood in front of the now open doorway, waving for the pair to follow after her. "Mom? Darling?" Kushina and Naruto questioned as they stared at the smiling Lamia with confused looks on their faces. "Man. Even Naruto's going to get excited when I show him this gem." Hiramasa excitedly cheered as he sped down the road on his bike, his legs pedaling as quickly as they could. His reason for racing to Naruto's house. Why, it's to show off a signed copy of ANM48's latest album that he'd gotten, comparatively, cheap. As he turned the last corner, Hiramasa's eyes widened when he saw construction workers and trucks waiting outside his friend's house. Putting on the brakes, Hiramasa tried to stop his momentum in time, but failing, the young man closed his eyes while preparing for the soon-to-come pain. That is where he felt his body being lifted into the air by the back of his gray jacket. As he heard his bike continue forward and slam into one of the trucks, followed shortly by the workers' complaints, Hiramasa cracked open his eyes to see what had happened. I'm fine," the man openly wondered as he was put safely onto his feet. "You're lucky is what you are," Hiramasa heard a stern, deep voice tell him. Flinching a bit, the young man turned around to see one of the workers giving him a stern look. The first thing to cross Hiramasa's mind when he saw this man was big. The man was easily 7 foot tall with a very thick muscular build. He had short, robust red hair poking out from under his hard hat that seamlessly connected to his facial hair that was trimmed to make a trail running along his jawline before being allowed to grow a little longer at his chin. His skin was well tanned from long hours working in the sun, and along his arms and legs the man had thicker hair than most people would. There's no point in rushing if you just end up hurting yourself, so slow down next time, the man told Hiramasa as he leaned down to the younger man's level. Why yes, sir. Hiramasa blurted out as he stiffened up. After staring at the petrified man for a bit, this imposing giant of a human being's expression let up. Good. The man said with a wide grin as he lightly slapped Hiramasa on the shoulder, nearly making the younger man fall to the ground. I'll let you slide as long as you're careful from now on. The red-haired man cheerfully said, standing up straight as Hiramasa attempted to maintain his balance. With a rush thank you from Hiramasa, the man watched as the guy turned and took off, making a beeline to Naruto's house. Slowly turning his head from the main gate, Hiramasa passed through to the house itself. The man's grin never left his face. So, this is their place, huh? The man thought as his mind traveled back to earlier that morning. Like any other morning, it started with him untangling himself from his blanket, grabbing one of the many discarded shirts off his floor, and heading to his kitchen to whip up a meal. It was when he reached his kitchen that his typical morning ended. Covering his mouth as he yawned, the man groggily walked into the kitchen dining room of his one-bedroom apartment. Walking past a man sitting at his table, he headed straight for his fridge, only to smack his head off the inside of his fridge when he realized that he had guessed. Rubbing the top of his head with a slight wince, the tall man leaned up as he turned around. The old man sitting there had long, white gray hair that flowed down his back before being tied off with a white ribbon at the end. His clothes consisted of a white kimono tied together at his waist with a black obi, and over his kimono, he wore a red haori with a white swirl design placed between his shoulder blades. His wrinkled expression was one of amusement as he watched the man sleepily stumble past him and then panic once his mind was awake enough to notice his presence. Master Izanagi. How are you? Why are you? The man was going on with a stunned expression before he remembered that he was only in a white shirt with stains covering it and a pair of green and white vertical striped boxers. Forgive me, master, I'll go change into something appropriate right, the man was animatedly saying as he rushed back to his room, only to freeze up when the old man told him to take a seat. Doing as he was told, the large man sat down next to Izanagi, who was short compared to the average person and so looked quite diminutive next to this towering man. This is a long way from your estate, master. I hope there were no incidents during your travels, the man said after sitting down, getting a brief look of irritation from the old man. Damn it, Kazuo, I'm old and not fragile. Izanagi snapped at the man, getting a panicked look from Kazuo. Why yes, of course. I didn't mean to imply that you were master. Kazuo told the man, holding his hands up as he gave a very nervous grin. Looking for a way to change the subject, Kazuo asked what the man was doing here. After all, he must have had to travel over half the country to visit. Oh, nothing much, I just heard some interesting information and came to check it out for myself, the old man said with a playful grin. Interesting information? Kazuo questioned. Anything I can do to help? The large man asked. Hearing Kazuo make that offer had Izanagi's grin widen just a little more. I'm glad you asked, since you'll be renovating the home of some very interesting people today, the old man told him, getting a confused look from Kazuo. But I don't have any work scheduled. Toda. Kazuo was talking while rubbing the back of his head when his phone started to ring. As Kazuo looked over to the counter, his phone was on. Izanagi told him, the owners of the house are Kushina and Naruto Uzumaki. Hearing that got Kazuo's mind going as he got up to answer his phone to hear that he was indeed scheduled for a home renovation today. Sorry, I must still be a little sleepy. Could you remind me again who they are? Kazuo asked, only half listening to the person on the other end of the line. The clan hasn't really stuck together since coming to this world, but they still got together from time to time and stayed in touch as much as possible, so it was a little odd to the man that he didn't immediately register who these two were from their names. You haven't met them before, Izanagi said with a big smile as he watched Kazuo's already confused expression grow even more so. I believe these two have traveled here from the other world and I want us to greet them as family, should Izanagi tell the man, getting a look of stunned disbelief from Izanagi. The voice on the other end of the line became nothing more than white noise to Kazuo as he tried to wrap his mind around the news he just heard. Kazuo thought to himself as he pulled his eyes away from the building and back to his men as they moved construction materials off of one of the trucks. After entering the house and taking off his shoes, Hiramasa called out for his friend as he walked further into the building. As he walked past the living room's entrance, he caught a glimpse of red out of the corner of his eye. Oh, hey Ms. Uzumaki. Do you know what Naruto's? Hiramasa was asking as he took a step back to look into the room, only to realize that it wasn't Kushina sitting on the couch. Taking her eyes off the magazine she was reading, Mia looked over her shoulder to see the man standing in the doorway with his mouth gaping open. It kind of felt uneasy having him stand there saying nothing while staring at her. Come to think of it, she had no idea who this guy was, so what's he doing here? Hey, Hiramasa, what are you doing ga? Naruto was saying as he walked up to his friend. However, he hadn't expected the guy to pull him into a headlock after coming to his house and calling out for him. You son of a bitch, I trusted you. Hiramasa hissed out through gritted teeth as jealous tears flowed down his face like waterfalls. As the man started to ramble about how the world was unfair, Naruto pulled Hiramasa's arm from around his neck before kicking the man away. The hell's wrong with you? Naruto questioned his friend, already annoyed with the man's actions. The hell's wrong with me? Hiramasa asked as he pushed himself off the floor. I'll tell you what's wrong. Hiramasa shouted as he ran up to the blonde and grabbed him by his shirt. You get signed up for a day and end up living with a vision of perfection, well I've got jack shit. Do you know how long I've been waiting? It's been months, you hear me, months. Hiramasa told the blonde directly to his face. He wanted Naruto to appreciate monster girls like he did, but why did life have to be so unfair? You're starting to piss me off, Naruto told the man as he pushed Hiramasa's face away from his own. Darling, is he your friend? Mia asked. From start to finish she'd been watching their interactions and it was honestly a little difficult to tell. Turning his attention away from Hiramasa to Mia, the blonde only now noticed she was there. Ah, yeah. This guy's Hiramasa. He's a bit hard to get used to, huh? Naruto was telling the Lamia when Hiramasa's hold on his shirt loosened. Both Naruto and Mia watched with odd expressions as Hiramasa slowly slinked down to his knees, muttering darling over and over again as silent tears covered his cheeks. Just a few days ago I had to bribe you just to enter my favorite monster girl cafe, and yet here you are, passing me by leaps and bounds, Hiramasa thought to himself, a small spark of pride forming for his friend beneath the soul-crushing aura afflicting him. Moving around the house, Kushina was keeping an eye on the workers tearing down and rebuilding her home. She understood why they'd need to make the place bigger for Mia to get around more comfortably, but she wished they'd had a little more time to get ready. Heck, she was up all night storing her weapons and other questionable objects away so that there wouldn't be any unwanted questions. Still, she was worrying herself ragged that she may have forgotten about something here and there. As she made her way into the entrance hall, she saw a tall, red-haired man directing others on what needed to be done. Excuse me, Kushina said, getting the man's attention. I have a few questions about this, Kushina was asking the man as she approached him, only to find herself in a tight embrace as her feet left the floor. You must be Kushina. I can tell just by looking in your eyes, you've got that Uzumaki spirit burning brightly inside you. Kazuo jovially cheered as he embraced the thoroughly confused woman. What are you talking about? Kushina loudly asked as she tried and failed to pry the man's arms apart. Sorry, it's just not every day we get a new face in the family, Kazuo apologized as he put Kushina back on her feet, his grin threatening to split his face as he did so. What? The red-haired woman breathed out as she took a step back, only to be stopped as Kazuo's hands came to rest on her shoulders. The last time was when little Nishi was born 4 years ago. The man continued on, not missing a beat, as Kushina stared at him with a very confused and concerned expression on her face. Bringing his right hand up to run the back of his head, Kazuo looked up though. Or was it 5 years ago? The man openly wondered. Taking this opportunity, Kushina slipped out of his hold and backed away from the large man. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Kushina nervously said as she held her hands up close to her chest. All she wanted to do was ask a few questions. Looking back down at the woman, Kazuo blinked a few times in confusion. Really? The man asked. When she replied in the affirmative, Kazuo got all flustered in embarrassment. I guess I went and let my excitement get the better of me again, Kazuo said as he began to run the back of his head again as his eyes darted up to the corner of the room in order to avoid Kushina's eyes. With her initial surprise dying down, Kushina's nervous expression turned into a stern scowl as she watched the man. When Kazuo glanced back at the woman, a cold chill ran down his spine as their eyes met. Ah, please don't get angry. I'll try again without getting all excited, promise. Kazuo begged in a bit of a panic. With a quick cough to clear his throat, Kazuo's posture straightened out as he held out his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, my name's Kazuo Uzumaki, the man who introduced himself. It took a minute for what he said to sink into her head, but when it did, Kushina's scowl slowly started to shift into a wide-eyed expression. What the woman asked so quietly it could barely be heard. Off in a dark parking garage, a man of average height and build stepped out of an elevator. Like any typical government agent, he was dressed in a black suit with black sunglasses covering his dark violet eyes. He had short black hair and a clean-shaved face with an air of seriousness surrounding him. Without any deviation he made his way to a black car and got into the driver's seat. "You're surprisingly calm about this," a woman's voice commented as the man put his seatbelt on. "They're only delaying me," the man told the woman sitting next to him in the passenger seat. The woman sitting in the car had wide hips, a slender waist, and hand-filling breasts. She wore a pink-tinged white kimono with a pink flower petal design starting from the bottom of the garment and running up on a diagonal line to end just under her left breast. Her long brown hair was pulled into two buns on top of her head, just behind the deer-like horn sticking out from her head. Her ears were long and pointed, sharing the same yellow color as the scales on her cheeks and lower arms and legs. Laid over her lap and leading into the back of the car was her long tail tipped with brown fur. "Still, it must be aggravating to be sent off to the other end of the country like this," the woman said as her emerald eyes locked onto the man next to her. "I can't handle this from the shadows like the others," the man said as he started the engine and started to drive. "I need time to plan my next move. It'll cause problems if we're not careful," he told her. With a smirk the woman turned her head to look out the window. "Just as long as this task doesn't take too long. Even thinking about it makes me restless," the dragoness commented. "It's a DAT, we're on a DAT, I'm on a date with my DARLING date." Mia was happily singing as she and Naruto walked down the street, ending with her arms thrown in the air as she turned to the blonde. When her eyes landed on the blonde however her joyous expression faltered a bit. A few paces behind her Naruto was walking along with a far-off look in his eyes. "Darling, you're not even paying attention." Mia pouted as her tail came up to wave back and forth in front of Naruto's face. "Huh? Oh, yeah, I'm listening to what Naruto said," after Mia brought his mind back down to earth. "Sure you were," Mia said with an exasperated expression. For 2 days now the blonde had been like this, letting his thoughts consume his attention. Mia could understand why she was there when her darling met Kazu. It wasn't hard to put together that neither Naruto or Kushina had expected to run into any family members, with how excited they were to hear that Kazu was a relative of theirs. Kazu had stayed at their house long after his shift had ended, offering to cook super for everyone and telling them stories about other members of the Uzumaki clan late into the night. Hearing about how close the family was made her wonder how Naruto and Kushina hadn't met any of their relatives before now, but in the end, she didn't want to ruin the good mood by prying into their past. Still, her darling being so absent-minded all the time was starting to affect her. She was happy for the blind of course, but this was their first ever date. He could at least stay focused for that. "You remember what Ms. Smith told you, right?" Mia asked the blonde man. "Yeah, I remember," Naruto said with a small sigh. The long and short of it was that extra species needed help integrating into human society, a task usually meant for the exchange program coordinator to do that Naruto ended up doing in Ms. Smith's place. "Then let's hurry. There's so much I want to see with you," darling, Mia happily said as her tail wrapped around Naruto's waist, forcing the blonde to keep up with her. Though it wasn't long before Mia found somewhere she wanted to go in the form of a local arcade. Now, this wasn't the first time Naruto's been inside the arcade, Hiramasa had brought him here a few times, so he wasn't completely out of the loop whenever Mia brought him to a new game. He totally sucked at any of the video games, but he was pretty good at anything else this place could throw at him, even if his pockets were a little lighter after the claw machine. On the way out Mia spotted the photo booth they had by the entrance and was quick to wrap her arms around Naruto's arm and drag him over to it. Once they were in the pair both put wide grins on their faces as the first of the pictures was being taken and quickly turned into Mia, nearly squeezing the life out of Naruto as she happily wrapped her arms and tail around him. "You're pretty strong, you know," Naruto commented as the pair left the arcade, holding his left shoulder as he rotated his arm to loosen it a bit. "Sorry," Mia apologized with an embarrassed blush, a paper bag full of stuffed animals held in front of her. With them taking turns at that claw machine she ended up with quite the collection. "Nah, it's fine," Naruto told her as he took his hand off his shoulder to look at the photos in his hand. "We got some pretty nice pictures out of it," the blonde said with a wide grin. His good mood was a bit infectious as Mia's worried expression vanished in place of a smile that she directed at her darling. "That's a really grumble," Mia was saying when a rumble cut her off. With a renewed blush the red-haired Lamia stared at the ground with a sheepish look on her face. After a moment of them standing there in silence a small smirk formed on Naruto's face. "There's a really great restaurant nearby, want to go?" the blonde offered. "It's okay, as long as she's happy," Naruto thought to himself, mentally weeping for his poor coin pouch as he stared at the wide assortment of dishes Mia had ordered. Meat wasn't exactly cheap and with her being a carnivore, it wasn't looking too good for little Gama-kun. "Thank you, darling. This all looks so delicious," Mia happily said, starting off her meal by cutting into the steak she ordered. The restaurant wasn't exactly built with someone like Mia in mind, so most of her body couldn't fit into the booth they were sitting at. Though Naruto had the strong suspicion that Mia wasn't the first large-bodied demehuman to eat here, given the reaction the manager had when she saw Mia. If Naruto didn't know better he would have said without hesitation that he saw dollar signs in her eyes when she rushed up to them. "I said it was good, didn't I?" Naruto said, pushing his money problems to the back of his mind as he started to dig into his own food. That however didn't last too long. With a churning sensation in his gut, Naruto's fork dropped to his plate as he quickly got out of his seat and ran to the bathroom, clutching his stomach like his life depended on it. "Darling. Are you okay?" worried, Mia was calling out to the blonde as she was getting up to chase after him when a hand on her shoulder stopped her. Following the hand up to its owner, she saw an old man smiling down at her. "Don't worry, he'll be fine in 10 or so minutes," Izanagi told her as he removed his hand from her shoulder. With Mia staring at him suspiciously, the old man moved over to take Naruto's empty seat. "Who are you? Did you do something to my darling?" Mia loudly questioned the man as the end of her tail waved around in response to her agitation. "Just a few laxatives I slipped into his food. It was the quickest way to get you alone for a little chat," the man said as he pulled out a small paper pouch, his eyes focused on the plate in front of him. His response didn't improve Mia's mood as she glared daggers at the man. "If you think I'll let you get away with hurting my," Mia was angrily saying, her tail threatening to strangle this man when, as calmly as possible, Izanagi continued to speak. "Is that any way to regard someone you may well call family in the future? Honestly, youth these days are so rude," Izanagi said, cutting Mia off as he poured the contents of the small pouch on the plate. As Mia's glare turned into an odd look of confusion, Izanagi commented, "This will nullify the laxatives I added earlier. Hopefully it won't change the taste. Don't go saying weird things and then change the topic." Mia yelled at the man, her anger quickly building back up. Looking up, Izanagi gave her a strange look. "Change the topic? Weren't you the one who asked what I was doing?" the old man asked. With that, Mia was pushed over the edge as her tail lashed out to smack this man across the restaurant. Faster than Mia's eyes could follow, Izanagi's hand moved to catch Mia's tail, followed by a strange sensation overtaking her body. "I can't move," Mia thought to herself as a sense of panic ran through her mind. Shifting her eyes about, Mia saw where Izanagi was holding her, around his hand and stretching out over her tail were odd markings. The gentle face Izanagi had, but a moment ago, was gone now. In its place was one of utter seriousness as he stared into Mia's golden eyes. "I heard from Kazu that you've become quite infatuated with Naruto. I may be overstepping my bounds in this instance, but there's a lot about the Uzumaki clan you need to hear before you get in over your head, so just stay still and listen to me very carefully," Izanagi told the girl as his eyes felt like they were peering into the deepest parts of Mia's very being. "Sorry about that, I don't know what hit me." Naruto apologized with a sheepish grin as he got back to the booth. As he sat down, he noticed something was off with Mia. It was almost like she hadn't even noticed he'd come back as she stared down at her untouched food. "Mia?" Naruto asked as he leaned over the table, trying to look up into Mia's face. "Mia, are you okay?" Naruto asked, seeming to get through to her this time as her eyes widened slightly and she looked up. "Oh, darling, when did you get back?" Mia asked the blonde as she put on a smile. "Mia?" the blonde asked as he leaned back down into his seat. It was easy to tell that he was worried about her from the look he was giving the girl. "I was just lost in thought," Mia told the blonde with a cheerful expression as she picked up her utensils. "Now, where were we?" the lamia asked as she started to cut up her steak again. Walking down the street, Izanagi couldn't help the smirk that played across his face, thinking about the talk he just had. The moment he had finished his side of the conversation and had let go of her tail, the woman had slammed her hands down on the table, yelling at him, "You think any of that matters? Darling is darling regardless of where he's from." After hearing her response, Izanagi couldn't stop the hearty laughter that escaped him. He'd apologized for taking up her time and left her some spending money to make up for the inconvenience. "Things are starting to look interesting," Izanagi said to himself as he continued on his way. "This is so fun. I thought Japan was a very formal place, but there's actually tons of fun things to do." Mia happily cheered as she walked down the street with her arm locked with Naruto's. Though, Mia started, holding onto the snake plushie shed one from the arcade in her free arm. "It can be a little hard with everything designed for humans. I really wanted to try out karaoke," the red-haired girl commented. "Some things can't be helped. It's only been 3 years since the exchange bill was passed after all," Naruto told her as he tried to imagine just how cramped it would be in one of those small rooms with just him and Mia in there. As he was imagining this, he heard Mia let out a gasp. "Look, darling. That shop serves all kinds of species," Mia excitedly said as she directed the blonde to a sign set up outside the shop. If the sign was anything to go by, then this shop was one of the few Naruto's seen that caters to multiple species. "Let's go in," the cute lamia excitedly said as she started to up their pace. As the two came to a stop at the store's entrance, one fact became glaringly obvious to the blonde. This is a lingerie shop. The blonde mentally screamed as he stared at the store full of displays. With an embarrassed tint to his cheeks, Naruto followed Mia into the store. All he had to do was stay quiet and stare at the floor till Mia found something she liked, and then they could leave. After Mia asked an employee if they had anything for Lamia's, Naruto was dragged with her over to the appropriate part of the store. Many uncomfortable minutes later, and Naruto found himself in a difficult position. "Hey darling. Which one looks better to you?" Mia asked as she held up a black lacy bra in her right hand and a white bra with pink frills and a small bow between the cups in her left hand for Naruto to inspect. Trying to stutter out a response, Naruto couldn't stop himself from imagining Mia in both of them. It was hard to say which looked better in his head. Mia was just the kind of girl that looked good in anything. "I don't really wear a bra, so I wouldn't know," Mia tells him with a blush on her cheeks as she leans over to him, pulling down her top so he could get a good look at her bare chest. With his mind racing, Naruto quickly turned away from the woman before he ended up looking like a creep to any passerby. I'm not really good with fashion, you know," Naruto told her, hoping Mia wouldn't push this any further. It was hard enough keeping her out of his head with how she is normally. If things continue like this, he won't be able to concentrate on anything. Not the reaction she was looking for. Glancing around the store, Mia searched for a plan B, finding it in the form of the nearby changing room. Taking Naruto by surprise, Mia wrapped her tail around him and dragged the young man into the room with her. "What? We have to be together all the time, right?" Mia said in response to Naruto asking why she brought him with her as she removed her denim jacket. Starting on her shirt, Mia tossed Naruto the two bras she brought with him. "Now then, take a look and tell me which one you prefer so that I can wear something to your liking," Mia told him as Naruto caught the lingerie. "'Cause you know, darling, I want you to like me even more," Mia tells a stunned Naruto as she had her shirt folded over her arms and her arms folded under her bare breasts and pushing them up slightly. "So take a good look and choose for me," the girl says while giving him a sultry look. Naruto stared at Mia's bare chest, unable to avert his eyes. "Both of them look great. We'll get both of them," Naruto blurted out as he thrust the two bras towards Mia, getting a gasp from the woman when he unintentionally groped her breasts with emotion. What? I didn't mean to HMPH. Naruto was trying to explain when Mia's tail wrapped around him and pulled him closer, smothering his head between her breasts. "Oh darling. You're so bold," Mia gushed as she held the blonde tightly against her body. "She's going to be the death of me," Naruto thought to himself, readily enjoying this moment while also hoping it doesn't cross that line and get him thrown in jail. It's been nearly 2 weeks since Mia moved in with him, and Naruto could finally say that he's gotten back into a good rhythm. Wake up in the morning, untangling himself from Mia if she'd snuck into his room during the night, go for an early morning run, mail it back home before Mia wakes up so he can get a warm bath ready for her, practice with his mother for at least an hour after breakfast, spend time with Mia, study up on the books Miss Smith left for him, leaving a clone at the house to watch Mia while he and Kushina go out for physical training, come back in time to help with supper, some free time to do whatever he wants, and then it's off to bed so all of it can start again tomorrow. It might have grown tedious for some people, but Naruto was enjoying his daily life. The day he was coming to the last third of his run, turning the bend to run along the river embankment as the sun was starting to rise over the city. As he sped along the usual path, Naruto noticed a new sight. Slowing down to a halt, the blonde stopped to watch. Below him was a woman holding a wooden practice lance with a target placed up further down the riverbank. With the sound of hooves hitting dew-covered grass, she charged the target, lance held firmly at her side as her long blonde ponytail flowed behind her. Coming to her target, her lance hit just off center, launching the target into a spin as she continued past it. Slowing to a stop, she looked over her shoulder at the target she'd struck. No matter what I do, I cannot hit the center mark," the centaur woman remarked with an unsatisfied expression. "It looked pretty good to me," the woman heard someone say, startling her as she took one of her hands off her lance and reached for the sword at her side. With one clean motion, she drew her blade and slashed, only for her blade to cut through thin air as Naruto backflipped out of its reach. Holding up his hands, Naruto frantically told the woman, "Whoa there. No need to swing a sword at me." Seeing this, the centaur's determined look turned to shame as she realized how close she was to accosting an innocent man. "Forgive my actions, I was startled by Thao's sudden appearance," the woman apologized as she lowered her sword. To be caught off guard so easily, truly this wasn't turning out to be her day. Then again, if that display of skill was more than a fluke, then her search may finally be over. No, it's fine," Naruto said, slowly lowering his hands as he calmed down. "I guess I should consider that most people can't hear me walking up to them," the blonde man said, feeling a bit sheepish for startling the woman. It's not that he intentionally does it, but when your whole life has been dedicated to shinobi training, moving silently comes as easy breathing. After glancing all around in embarrassment for a moment, Naruto's eyes came to land on the woman in front of him. Giving her a wide grin, the boy stretched out his arm as he introduced himself. Reaching out to take his hand, the centaur woman then made her introduction, along with a little extra declaration. My name is Centauria Shionis, a member of the highly esteemed centaur race. Thou must be the fated man that shall become my master. As he shook her hand, Naruto's head slowly tilted to the side as his brain attempted to register what she just told him. I'm sorry, what Naruto quietly asked as their handshake came to an end. I was going to try a Japanese magic charm if my search had stretched on, but it would seem fate had smiled upon us this day. Centauria happily said. Wait. Naruto blurted out as he came back to his senses, throwing his hands up wildly as he did so. Is something the matter, master? Centauria questioned with a slightly concerned look on her face. Of course there is. How can you just decide that I'm going to be your master? Naruto all but yelled at the woman, startling her a bit at his reaction. Forgive me, master, this is probably a little surprising, but please hear me out, Centauria implored for his attention. For a centaur, this is a great privilege to serve under a master we deem worthy. I have not known thee for long, but already I can tell by thou's movements, and by the way you carry yourself, that thou hath dedicated a great deal of time to strengthening thou's body and spirit. If I follow a man like thou, I am certain that I can live without regret, the woman told him. Seeing that this was something important to her, Naruto took a small step back while trying to work out how he should take it from here. When he came down here to watch her train, it was just out of curiosity. He wasn't expecting to get roped into something like this. Well, is strength all you care about when looking for a master? Naruto asked after recompassing himself. This seemed to push a button of hers as Centauria's hands tightened. Of course, strength is not the only factor that matters. I would never serve a man solely because of his strength, Centauria shouted at the blonde as she leaned down to stare him in the eyes. Then how do you know I'd be a good master, huh? We don't know anything about each other. Naruto shot back, pushing his face closer to hers as the two entered into a short staring match. Straightening herself out, Centauria turned to the side as she folded her arms under her massive chest. Very well, I shall accompany you for the duration of today and then decide if you are worthy of being my master, the woman told him, getting a shocked look from the blonde. Naruto was so frustrated that he wanted to scream out to the heavens. Restraining himself, he turned to head back up the bank. Fine. Do whatever you want, Naruto said as he walked away. The tension from their little argument dissipated shortly after the pair left the riverside, and in its place was an awkward atmosphere that lingered over them as they walked through the streets. Both of them wanted to apologize for how they acted, but whenever either made an attempt to do so, it just devolved into some meaningless small talk before even leaving their lips. Naruto had even taken a longer route back home in the hope that they'd be able to resolve this, and he really didn't want to see how his mother and Mia would react if Centauria decided to follow him into his house. After walking 2 blocks in uncomfortable silence, Naruto decided to just suck it up and be the first to apologize. As Naruto came to a stop, Centauria halted a few steps ahead of him, her long ears flicking up as she turned at the waist to look at the blonde. Look, Centauria, I'm really sorry, the young man was trying to say when a woman's scream cut off anything he was about to say. Turning their attention to where they'd just walked from, both Naruto and Centauria could see a man riding a moped with a purse, presumably belonging to the woman he had passed by, in his hand. Master, look out. Centauria called out as she rushed over to push the young man out of the way, even if it meant putting her own body in the purse thief's path. However, Centauria was stunned when instead of protecting Naruto with her body like she intended, she felt his arms wrap around her as she wrapped her own around him before feeling him pull her off to the side of the road with him. As the moped sped by, both Naruto and Centauria fell, landed with a thump on the road a few feet out of his way. Grabbing Centauria's shoulders, Naruto pushed her and her breasts off of him. Are you insane? You could have gotten seriously hurt pulling a stunt like that, Naruto told her as he pulled his feet out from under her horse body. Forgive me, I was only thinking of thou's safety. Centauria apologized as she looked down at the road while her left arm came up to sheepishly rub her other arm. Seeing a hand enter her view, Centauria looked up to see Naruto staring down at her with a warm, welcoming look on his face. Are you hurt? The blonde man asked. I am unharmed, Centauria told him as she took his hand, letting him help her back up to her feet. Once she was on all 4 of her hooves, Naruto asked if she could run faster than a moped. Of course I can, Centauria answered him. But Naruto said with a smirk as he turned and started to run off in the direction the purse thief drove off in. Because I'm going to show that guy that he can't get away with this, and I wouldn't want you falling behind. The blonde yelled back to her as his pace got faster and faster. But the smirk Santoria began to run as well, doing her best to catch up with the blonde. It is my duty to always remain by my master's side. If I cannot keep up, then I will bring shame upon the centaur race, the woman boldly proclaimed. While speeding through the streets, the thief marveled at today's prize, skimming through the contents of the purse and finding a sizable sum of money. That is until several shuriken were thrown at his pike, blowing out his back tire, while others planted themselves firmly into the chassis. Panicking, the man dropped the purse as his hands jerked back to the moped's handles, struggling to keep the bike from crashing as the now bare rim sent sparks out as it rolled across the asphalt. "Stop right there," Santoria yelled out as she thrust her sword down to catch the slope of the dropped purse. "Thou thief. The meek shall arrest you. Else, they shall drown in the depths of thy crime," the woman said as her arm came up so that the purse slid down her blade and subsequently her arm. "I shall have you taste my blade," Santoria proclaimed as she directed her sword forward. "Why, you're that horse chick from before," the thief shouted as he looked over his shoulder at the woman. "Just give it up, pal." Hearing Naruto's voice, the man's head jerked to the side to see the young man running along the stone walls running along the street. "The hell?" the man cried out. Turning his head forward again, the man squeezed the throttle as he yelled out, "Just try to keep up with my Model 36. Even with his back tire gone, the man refused to admit defeat and continued forward in a desperate attempt to escape. As they approached a four-way intersection, the man's ride grew more and more unstable, threatening to topple over at any moment. It was then, at the intersection, when a policewoman came sliding in on her motorcycle, clipping the moped's front tire and causing it to flip over her. As the officer came to a stop on the other side of the intersection, she took notice of Naruto and Santoria's surprised expressions as they came to a stop. Putting down her kickstand, she got off her bike and walked over to the two as Naruto hopped down next to Santoria. "He's kind of durable, isn't he?" Naruto commented as he saw the thief trying to pull himself up with the aid of a lampist. While he was busy with that, Santoria was the first to notice the officer coming over to them. It was a little difficult to distinguish any sort of defining features with her helmet on, but nonetheless the woman was clearly an officer. "There is no need to thank us, we were only Santoria was saying when the officer reached up to pull her down by her ear, a fate Naruto wasn't going to escape as her other hand grabbed onto one of his ears. "Thank you. Thanking you is the last thing I'm going to do," the woman told them, speaking as if she were reprimanding her own children. Letting them go, the woman placed her hands on her hips as she watched them rub their sour ears with small droplets forming at the corners of their eyes. "The police are here for a reason, regardless of whether or not your intentions are pure. Being reckless like this is just stupid, understand?" the woman said. Seeing the pair quickly nod, the officer then told them, "Good, then get out of here before I decide to dish out punishment." Without hesitation, the two of them took off, leaving the officer to clean up this mess. Once they were gone, the woman let out a long sigh. "Honestly, why is my family full of idiots? That didn't turn out the way I expected, but at least that guy's going to jail," Naruto remarked as he and Santoria walked through the streets looking for the woman the guy robbed. In the moment they were just listening to what the officer had told them, but in the process they ended up taking the purse with them. "I don't suppose to remember what she looked like, do you?" in Santoria, Naruto asked. He figured it wouldn't be hard to figure out who she was once they got back to the street she was on, but by the time they got there she had left. "Sorry," Naruto heard Santoria tell him. When he'd asked her a simple what, she went on to tell him, "Call me Saria, nodded is the name those close to me use." "I suppose this means you're not going to drop the whole master thing, are you?" Naruto asked her. "There is no other man in this world who I could call my master," Master Santoria told him with a small smile and faint blush. Oddly enough, hearing that didn't bother him as much as it did when they first met. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time, till then sayonara.